Come in. It's only me, the dog, staying home. We had a nasty coffee. We had a nasty coffee.
We can hear you.
Very well. We continue then with question time. And the next question, Deputy Alves will ask of the chair of the SEB. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to written question 105 of 2021, will the chair provide his assessment of whether the current living wage eligibility criteria is fit for purpose and use in the board's engagement of contractors, and state whether he is aware of any possibility for companies engaged by the states to avoid paying workers a living wage by allocating shifts that do not meet the minimum requirements?
Chair.
Sir, thank you. So the living wage criteria and parameters are not set by government. So governments work with Caritas to ensure that living wage criteria was adopted appropriately and delivered consistently. And as outlined in the question, so all contracts are recorded centrally by commercial services as meeting living wage criteria, have a provision in the contractual agreement to meet the requirements. What I would say, sir, is we're not aware of any contractors being engaged that are not meeting their contractual obligations in relation to the living wage. But obviously, if the deputy is aware of contractors that are not meeting their obligations, I'd be very grateful if she'd forward those details to me, and we will categorically follow them up.
Supplemental, Deputy?
Yes, thank you, sir. So what checks, if any, are in place to see whether these contractors are fulfilling the requirements?
Sir, I would suggest, sir, that we're not going to. I don't think we carry out an audit, sir, that specifically requires, for the sake of argument, where we go and sample check the number of hours that somebody is working. Obviously, the requirement to make sure that if they are doing the requisite number of hours, that they are subject to living wage. But obviously, it is a case, sir, that it will be part of the contract. And obviously, if it is identified to us that a contractor is in breach of those obligations, that will be absolutely followed up, sir. And as I said, I'm not aware of any circumstances, but very happy if the deputy wants to pass on any information she may have, which I'm assuming is the reason for the background to the case, to the question, sir.
Senator Bezic.
Thanks, sir. Is the Chair of the State's Employment Board aware of any contractors who are paying their workers less than the living wage because they're on old contracts that haven't been renewed since the decision to require contractors to pay the living wage was made? And if he is aware of whether that is still the case, is he aware to what extent it may be the case?
So I'm not aware to the extent. I do know that there were, I do recall, sir, that there were some contracts which had a period of time left to run. And therefore, on that basis, it'll be when those contracts are, if they have not already been renewed, if those contracts, when they come to be renewed, and if they meet the criteria, that they will then be required to make sure they are, as I said, applying the living wage as appropriate. I do make the point, as we've said on many occasions, all of the data in this kind of area is very difficult to bring together, which is why we've invested in the IT systems that we're investing in, sir.
Supplemental, Senator? Deputy Southern?
Thank you, sir. May I ask when the last review was done over the effectiveness of our support for the living wage?
Sorry, sir. Having said we don't do an audit on it, and therefore we're going through, and as contracts come to fruition, to come to complete conclusion, they will obviously, if they're being renewed, they will be then subject to living wage. I'm not quite too sure what else the deputy is referring to, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy?
The question is about what reviews you have done over the existing situation. Would you have caught anybody not paying the living wage if you haven't done a review? I mean, there must be some mechanism in the system. We're either for the living wage and engaged with it, or we're not.
Well, sir, if part E of the answer, sir, refers to 39 contracts are due to be reviewed during 2021, whether living wage terms are likely to be applicable, sir. I don't have any additional information that suggests any further review beyond that, sir.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. I would welcome a meeting with the chair to discuss in order to avoid bringing it up in the public arena. So I hope that the chair will be happy to meet with me about this. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. If I'll ask my team to get that into the diary, sir. Thank you, sir.
Well, we come to question 8. The Deputy Masson will ask of the chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the chair? Let me start again. Will the chair state when the terms of reference for the review of the draft road traffic number 68 Jersey regulations, P39 2021, aka the cat protection legislation, will be published, and inform members whether all members of his panel supported the decision to scrutinise the legislation prior to the regulations being referred under Standing Order 72? Thank you, sir.
Chair.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question and his continued interest in the subject. The panel, sir, will be conducting a short scrutiny review with the intention of producing a comments paper ahead of the revised debate of the 5th of October. As such, it is not intended for this to be scoped as a full scrutiny review with terms of reference. With regard to the second part of the question, sir, prior to the debate, in fact, the night before, at my regular parish police meeting, I'd had feedback from Centeniers regarding the policeability of the proposed law, and as such, invited my other scrutiny panel members to for their views with regard to calling it in for further consideration. And I'm happy to repeat what I told them, which is basically that I'd had feedback from Centeniers at last Monday's police meeting regarding the ability to police this proposed law, which seems to have several holes in it. I'm thinking that in the light of this, we ought to call it in for a review. Let me know if you have strong feelings against this. 3 of the panel members responded in the affirmative, 2 didn't respond, and with me that made 4 calling it in, and with 2 not responding, so I presume they have no strong feelings against. Thank you, sir.
Well, supplemental, Deputy Masson.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure as the chair will know, the petitioners who brought this proposition are keen to engage in the scrutiny process, but without a terms of reference, it makes it very difficult for them to know exactly what they should do. I wonder if the chair could provide any further clarity of what the concerns of the scrutiny panel are, so that the petitioners are able to participate in the scrutiny process. Thank you, sir.
So yes, of course, it's the objective is to meet with the Comité des Chefs de Police and listen to their concerns, and then to meet with the Equal Rights for Cats Action Group to hear their views. We shall also be liaising with the Minister for Infrastructure on the concerns raised and with any further questioning in due course. So the review is being publicised on the States Assembly website, enabling members of the public and interested parties to follow or engage with our work should they wish to do so. Thank you, sir.
Well, we come to question 9. The Deputy Ward will ask of the Minister for Children and Education. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. May I ask what work, if any, has the Minister undertaken to confirm whether or not transition days in primary, secondary and tertiary settings act as super spreader events for COVID-19 infection? And if such work has been undertaken, what assurances can he provide to the Assembly that this was not the case? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So transition has already been carried out for some students moving from year 11 to year 12. These transition events, which include additional mitigations, have passed off successfully with no evidence of any super spreading. SIPES officers work closely with the environmental health contact tracing team public health officers and STAC. Each positive case in schools is analysed to identify any patterns of transmission, and none has been identified in relation to transition days.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the Minister to detail what work has been done to look for possible spread of the virus, seeing as some of the transition days only finished at the end of last week, and whether he believes that bringing children together in and those circumstances could have been a risk that was one step too far. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now, the work that's done to identify where the transmission is and where patterns are is done by the environmental health contact tracing team and the medical officers that are much more qualified to look into that than I, sir. We have put in lots of mitigations to make sure that these extremely important days for children can take place, and that means about not mixing in bubbles, making sure that we've got master worn in communal areas, good record keeping to ensure that movements can be tracked of children. The issue of transition days are so important to the children's education and moving forward, and my team has been working for a long time now to make sure that whatever happened within COVID, that we had the right mitigation in place to have the safest possible outcome to continue these educational days.
Well, we come to question 10. The Deputy Southern will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister inform members what powers, if any, she has to sell off utility assets without bringing such decisions to the States Assembly for agreement?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I assume that the Deputy's question is prompted by the recent announcement of JT's sale of its majority stake in its IoT business, obviously IoT being Internet of Things. Under the Public Finances Jersey Law 2019, the States has assigned to me responsibility to, quote, exercise the rights attached to shares in a company, wherever incorporated, that are owned by the states in the name of the states, unquote. In addition, the relationship with the states-owned entities is governed by memoranda of understanding, and under the provisions of these MOUs, which are not legally binding, the sale of material assets by an SOE require my consent. In considering the JT's board request for consent to the sale of the majority stake of its subsidiary company, I sought independent advice on the nature and construct of the transaction and my role in its approval. The relationship with the SOEs is one that was created to allow the vital components of the island's infrastructure to be managed commercially and by experts in the appropriate field with proper oversight from the shareholder. The sale of the majority stake in a deal that exceeded initial expectations has demonstrated the value of a successful relationship between the SOEs and the Minister for Treasury and Resources as representative shareholder. I would remind members that this transaction did not involve the sale of a utility asset, and the states, represented by myself as shareholder, still owns 100% of the shares in the JT Group. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. What estimate does the Treasury Minister have for the combined tax and dividends which will be paid to the states under the new circumstances? And how does this compare with the tax and dividend that is returned from this entity presently?
Right, well, that is a question, Deputy, that is still under discussion with the board of JT. So we don't know exactly what the return is going to be because the contract has only just recently been signed. We just simply don't have those details at the moment. We have 2 weeks from the signing of the contract, which was at the end of last week, in order to go through all those details, and we are in discussions with them. Thank you.
Connie Tarbison, John.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister be requesting a special dividend from JT? Thank you.
We will be expecting a dividend, Conatar, but as I said in the answer to my last question, we don't know what the details are just yet. Thank you.
Supplemental comment?
Yes, please, sir. Was that not part of the advice that was sought before the sale? Thank you.
Yes, it would have been, but the final details have not yet been approved. So there is a certain amount of debt that JT have to clear from this. They have to remove their high-risk vendor equipment, as everybody will know. They have to invest in JT International Pipeline products, local services, further investment in 5G. And so until all that is sorted out down to the last penny, we won't know what the dividend return to Treasury is.
Well, I have Senator Messick, Deputy Gardner, Deputy Warden, then final supplementary. No further questions after those. Senator Messick.
Thanks, sir. Given the importance that these state-owned companies play in Jersey, not just in providing revenue back for the government, but in helping to deliver our strategic aims on things like connectivity and sustainability, does the Minister not think it might have been more appropriate to have had some form of discussion with the elected representatives of this island before taking such a drastic step like this in such an important company which we own?
Thank you, Senator. We still do own 100% of the shares in JT. This is a subsidiary company, Internet of Things, IoT, which is a global network which JT has invested in. So there is no question that the electorate or the Assembly or the Minister for Treasury and Resources as shareholder, there is no question that they still do not own 100% of Jersey Telecom shares.
Supplemental, Senator.
Thank you, sir, and I well understand that, but the point of these state-owned companies is to provide some sort of public benefit. That's why we own them, and that's why we help set their strategic directions, and that includes, presumably, their subsidiary companies and what they offer for the island. So since this is quite a drastic move, I'm not saying it's positive or negative, it's drastic one way or the other, is it not more democratic to, rather than spring this on members at the last moment before it's too late to ask questions or anything before it happens, to include us in the discussions on that so we know what's happening and can express some sort of democratic verdict on it? Is that not a more democratic way to run these companies for the public benefit?
No, sir. It was a commercially sensitive transaction with a significant number of bidders, and it would not have been appropriate to make it public. And as I say, it's the board of JT that conducted these with several different independent advisors as a commercial sale, if you like, of a part of JT. But the actual infrastructure of JT, for which the public are accountable, if you like, as Treasury shareholder, has not been touched. The infrastructure is still 100% owned by the shareholder and the Assembly.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would Minister advise when the last time the MOU with Jersey Telecom has been updated as per recommendation from Comptroller and Auditor General?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Gardner. Good question. All MOUs of all state-owned entities and partially owned state-owned entities like Jersey Electricity and Jersey Water are all undergoing review of their MOUs at the current time, almost completed.
Okay, so just to clarify that since 2014, since the recommendation from 2014 and follow up in 2019, the MOU with Jersey Telecom hasn't been updated yet. So we are relying on MOU from 2002. Is it correct?
Not quite, Deputy. It has been updated. It just hasn't yet been published, but that will be published shortly. As I say, all the state-owned entities memorandums have been updated. Thank you.
Deputy Ward.
Actually, so my questions have been covered in the last set of questions, so thank you, sir.
Thank you. Final supplementary, Deputy Sutton.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister clarify for me that we haven't sold anything that we shouldn't have sold, and that we don't know what price we're getting for the subsidiary that we have or haven't bought? Can the Minister clarify when she's going to come to the House to get the stamp of approval on this action from states members, or is she not going to do that? Is this a start of a mass privatisation of all utilities?
No, sir, it isn't a mass privatisation at all. And as I keep saying and try to emphasise, nothing of the actual JT group, the infrastructure, has been sold. This is a subsidiary of that group, run and initiated by the board of that group, which has been enormously successful. And there was a bidding war in order to purchase it, and Jersey Telecoms still have a minority share in the business. So it seems to be, to me, rather, and I've been involved with it, a win-win situation. Thank you.
Very much. Could I remind members that standing orders provide that all addresses should be made through the chair. Therefore, it's not appropriate when answering a question or indeed posing a question to direct that question or that answer to the member by name. Very well. We come now to question 11, which Deputy Higgins will ask the Minister for Home Affairs. Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Further to written questions 280 and 299 of this year, will the Minister elaborate on the reasons for the increased stop and search of juveniles by the States and Honorary Police between 2016 and 2021, and explain what other measures are being used to deal with the perceived problems? Thank you.
Minister.
So, the police have the power to stop and search any person who they suspect may be in possession of controlled drugs, stolen prohibited articles, such as offensive weapons, including knives, items relating to crimes, including larceny, break and entry, and fraud. In respect of juveniles, stop and search powers are used in a variety of circumstances, including following reports from the public of suspicious behavior, suspected drug use, theft reports, and the suspected carrying of knives. The increase in the use of stop and search power over the period in question is a result of targeted action to respond to the behavior and action of some young people.
Supplementary question, Deputy Higgins?
Yes, sir. The written answers indicated that a small number of people have been stopped on multiple times. Can I ask the Minister what he's doing with youth service or children's services or whatever to try and find other ways of dealing with these people that would stop the amount of police time being expended on it? Thank you.
Well, I will answer to the deputy that we would be delighted to find another way of dealing with these people. It is a very small number of young people, probably 10 to 20, which account for 20% of all recorded crime in Jersey. And if there was any other way to deal with them, we would be extremely interested to hear about it. We launched Operation Optical in 2020, and it is a strategic and multi-agency approach, working with colleagues in SIPES, Health, the Honorary Police, and others. The States of Jersey Police understands quite well the fact that these problems should be tackled earlier on. But right now, the delinquents are in the street and need to be dealt with.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I don't know where to start with my question now. Can I ask the Minister, you used the word targeted towards a particular group, small group, and then used the word delinquents. But does the Honorary Police or the police have a list of their supposed delinquents, and are they being stopped again and again? And if so, what records are being kept of the outcomes and consequences of that? And does he really think that that is the best way forward? Thank you, sir.
So, no, I do not think it's the best way forward, but if there was any other suggestion, I would be really happy to hear about it. Those young people come from families which already have their own problems, and usually for several generations. So it is quite clear that it is a long-standing social problem that needs to be resolved. The solution in this case, the actual best possible solution, was 30 or 40 years ago. And the one thing that we must make sure is that we are not generating in this generation the same children that we have to deal with now.
Supplementary, sir?
Yes.
So may I ask the Minister, is he now suggesting that particular families are being targeted for the stop and search of their children because of their historic incidences or because of a reputation that they have? Is that what our policing has come to?
That's a weirdly formulated question. No, of course we are not. What did you expect me to answer? Sorry, what did the deputy expect me to answer? No. Again, 10 young offenders commit 15% of all recorded crime in the island. They are known, they are a problem. And the only way that the police found to deal with them was actually to spend a lot of time with them, but also to work with the other agencies to make sure that they had other activities that were not basically antisocial. So it's a multi-agency process, and we try to spend as much time as we can with them in schools, in extracurricular activities, and to make sure that they are not in the street committing crimes. But when they are in the street committing crimes, they do need to be stopped.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. There's, from the written questions that Deputy Higgins lodged, it's clear by my own calculations that there has been a 700% increase in stop and searches on young people between 2018 and 2020. Whilst the Minister says that these are targeted approaches, does he not feel that such a massive increase in stop and searches, which is far greater than the increase in any young person's crime, is actually having a detrimental effect on the reputation of the police amongst young people, because they are all beginning to feel targeted by the police?
Absolutely. The State of Jersey Police recognizes quite clearly that this is a problem and that it will not improve their relationship with young people. But do remember that the State of Jersey Police is targeted with keeping the peace and the safety of all Jersey residents.
Supplementary, please, sir.
Yes.
Yes, please, sir. If I could ask as well, it's interesting that this increase in stop and searches coincides with the appointment of the new Chief of Police from the British Transport Police originally, where they undertake a large amount of stop and searches. Does the Minister believe that this correlation is in fact causation, and the Chief of Police is just importing a tactic that he used for different reasons as a member of the British Transport Police?
This is a more interesting question. I would say no. I would say that if anything happened, it was actually Constable Norman's and my own fault, because a couple of years ago, we decided to increase the number of active police persons. And this extra influx of about 20 uniformed personnel allowed them to restart community policing. So whereas the parishes had been depleted of State of Jersey Police officers in the past years, we gave the possibility for the police to restart community policing. And this, of course, is one of the results, is that the police force in the community are trying to deal with those delinquents.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Higgins. Deputy Higgins, final supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. Could I ask the Minister, I was somewhat concerned in the written answers that many of the police officers, although wearing body-worn cameras, aren't recording all these instances. And I think it would be beneficial, not only for the other agencies, but for state's members to understand the exact nature of the interaction of the police with these people. So could I ask him, will he seek to ensure that police officers do record these instances? Thank you.
Yes, well, a couple of things about this. And the first one is that officers are required to record as much of their interaction with the public as possible. Sometimes the interaction happens unexpectedly, or They just forget to record it. But the vast majority of the interaction with the public is indeed recorded. One thing about these interactions in particular is that as they involve children, it would probably not be possible to share them with just anybody. There will be a very strong presumption of anonymity, which means that we will probably not be able, especially in an island where everybody knows everybody, we would not be able to share them. And to answer a previous question, because I think this is relevant as well, everything, absolutely everything is recorded. Sometimes it's difficult to find because it's somewhere on a piece of paper, but there is no action from our police which is not recorded somewhere.
Well, we come to question 12. The Senator Valwar will ask the Minister for Children and Education and Children.
Yes, thank you, sir. Further to the presentation of R105 2021 regarding transfers between heads of expenditure, will the Minister advise what consultation, if any, he had with the Political Oversight Group regarding the deferral of £2,086,000 worth of funding for education projects until 2022? And why the school extension improvements and Rouge Bouillon site review outcome projects were deferred in particular over other projects?
Minister.
I thank the Senator for a question. Sir, I did not have any consultation with the Political Oversight Group regarding the deferrals, but I was involved in discussions at the Council of Ministers and briefed by my officers before approving the deferrals. So my officers were asked where the budgets might be reprofiled to release funds for the hospital, on the understanding that our projects would be repaid to meet the costs when they were more likely to be incurred. My officers took a view on which projects might have natural lag in them from practical reasons. For example, how far along they are, how that in the necessary planning and building permissions. Do they have a project manager assigned by IHE? The idea was that if the money wasn't going to be spent, normally it would fall away to the to the consolidated fund as per the public finances law. We looked where that money might not be spent so we could reprofile it and use it for something for the benefit of the island.
Supplemental, Senator?
Yes, thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for his answer. It refers to schools and extensions and improvements. There's a sum of money that's taken out of there, but we don't actually know which projects that refers to. So could the Minister expand on whether it's, for example, Lalonde Nursery, Montalabé Extension, or JCG and JCP playing fields? Could he give us an indication of what particular projects are now lagging as per his answer?
Yes, of course. The school extensions improvements have not been affected as such. It's just that due to COVID that we knew that we weren't going to be as advanced as we are, but they're still online to be started by October, and that's the extensions to Lemoy, Lalonde, Montalabé. This money would not have been spent this year, but we will have the money, and the projects are still going ahead 100%. It was just that due to certain things that happened like COVID, that we weren't going to be able to deliver on spending that much money throughout the year. Therefore, we reprofiled it, but it has not stopped or slowed down much more the projects which are the improvements.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you. Would Minister please explain why this money was not reprofiled within the department? For example, if we'll go back to January and department knew that they have the money and we always have the need in education, and this money wasn't reprofiled within the department and they gone out to different projects.
So the capital programme money can't be reprofiled in a way that we just bring it back into the department and spend it somewhere else in that way. For the department, it has to be looked at in a different way. So the money that we got through the government plan for these projects will still be there. We will still get the money that was approved by the government plan. If we would have wanted to reprofile it and spend it on something else, we would need to have done that in a different way, Deputy.
If I understood correct, they could be, yes, sir, it could be reprofiled within the capital project. And we have, for example, a field that was allocated to the First Tower School that we never got the budget to look into this and to see how it can be developed. So why money would it be reprofiled to that project within the department?
So the piece of work on the hospital has been delayed due to other factors that are out of our control, which meant that there was a cost associated with that. We needed to look where we could find money for that, which is an important project for the benefit of all islanders, and that's why we chose to go down that route, sir.
Well, Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister clarify what he means by the projects haven't been referred? Is it a lag or is it due to poor forecasting? Thank you, sir.
So it's more to do with trying to get the project managers and trying to get the planning work done. All the plans submitted at this stage, we hope to have contractors on site by October this year. For the start of, there are projects like the 3D pitches at St Clement's, Plat Douay and Granville, which will be installed for the start of the September term. But because of the inability to do certain things through the COVID period, we weren't able to get the contractors or the work done in that way. But there's a full intention to deliver them as was requested by this Assembly.
Supplementary question, Deborah?
No, thank you, sir.
Correct, St John.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister aware that his department claim they don't have sufficient funds to draw a police at St John's? Thank you.
I was not aware. Happy to speak to the constable about that if he wishes, with some officers to find out what's going on.
Supplemental, the Constable?
Would the money have been better spent on things such as leases, drawing up leases, than deferring to another department? Thank you.
I think the money's best spent on the health of the island in this way. The need was right there, right now. So I'm happy with how this has gone on.
Final supplementary, Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. Appreciating the position that the Minister is in, I'm very much an advocate of openness and transparency, and I'd like a clearer picture exactly what has been deferred within the school's extension and improvements, particularly with the question from the last from the Constable of St John's, where there was funding put in place for that. Would the Minister commit to providing the deferral of funds that's indicated under page 143 of the government plan for school extensions and improvements, with the funding that was put in place for 5.9 million? What of that was deferred till 2022, and a clear explanation as to why that was the case?
I'm absolutely happy to provide that, and as the Senator is on the scrutiny panel that oversees the Education Department, I'll happily go and get officers together to do a briefing for the scrutiny panel if she so wishes.
Well, we come to question 13 that Senator Pallett will ask the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture. Senator.
Thank you, sir. With reference to R105 2021 and the reported transfers between heads of expenditure, specifically the deferral of £500,000 to 2022 under the title Sports Division Refurbishment, will the Minister advise which projects are being deferred, whether any intended projects are to be cancelled, whether the Minister was consulted about deferrals, and whether he was formally he formally agreed to the deferrals, and if so, when and how?
Thank you, sir. I shall be responding to that, sir, if I may. I will take each question as the Senator had said. The £500,000 was deferred for next year. I can confirm the projects that are included in that 500,000k, which was deferred for next year. That was the new cricket nets, Le Caneve Pool Wetside Changing Room, Le Caneve new playground, the Caneve new sauna steam, new lighting at the airport playing fields, and the new CCTV system at FB Fields. All these will be carried out next year, but they have been deferred. And just to confirm one other thing, as you know, I'm a member of the hospital POG board, so was fully aware of the proposals. I was also briefed about the officers, about the deferral, and it was further discussed at the Council of Ministers. And I wanted it to make absolutely clear that we weren't going to miss out. And can I further say, and I know it sounds as if one's repeating themselves, but there's money in the budget to do quite a few of the things that were restricted this year, which will be carried out this year. I'm quite happy to go through them with you, or I'm happy to let every member of the Assembly see a copy of what we're intending to do. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Senator Ballard?
Yes, sir. As the Assistant Minister will be aware, the money for the sports division refurbishment was hard fought in the government plan. The department's been desperately underinvested in for some years now, and what he mentioned desperately needs to be done. Can he really explain to me why that these important projects have been deferred? Because it really is hitting hard at those in the sports world when they don't see these projects come to fruition.
I have to say I totally agree with you, sir, and it was very difficult for me to go through some of the things that we were asking to be deferred, but I have had full confirmation that this will be carried out next year. The money will be transferred, and what I suggested and what you have suggested does need doing. I think the biggest problem was that we let Kennervey, let's say we didn't look after Kennervey over the last 5 to 10 years, and we're now paying the consequences. But it would be my intention with the work that's being carried out by the sporting bodies that this will be done for next year. But I am also, as I said, got a list of things that will also be carried out at Kennervey whilst through this year from the money that's already in the budget.
Senator Falwa?
Yes, thank you, sir. Could the Assistant Minister confirm or deny whether any of the £500,000 for the sports division refurbishment has been requested through a business case to the fiscal stimulus fund?
I'd actually would have to, thank you for the question. I would actually have to come back on that. I'm more than happy to find out. I hadn't looked at that angle at all, but I'm more than happy to do so and come back to the Senator as requested.
Supplemental, Senator?
No, I'd appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Senator Pallett.
Just really some assurance from the Assistant Minister that this work will take place next year. He mentioned the fact that that sports division hasn't been invested in over the last 5 or 10 years, but that's been because of repeated councillor ministers' decisions not to invest in the sports division, and that's why I'm so upset that this money's been withdrawn this year, because it is so hard fought. Will he reassure this Assembly that this work will take place next year?
I think you know my background, sir, and I would be absolutely, I want to make sure this is carried out and we need to do it. The other thing is that we're under pressure to do it anyway, because some of this work has to be done because there's a risk assessment as well as making sure that the people can use the facilities, especially with the facilities at Kennervey. And I will put my heart and soul into making sure that this moves forward for 2022. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We come to question 14. The Deputy Alves will ask of the Minister for Children and Education. Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. Further to written question 292 of 2021, will the Minister advise what statistics or other data are collected on young people who are found to be engaging in antisocial or criminal behaviour? And is it the Minister's assessment that the current support in place is making a positive, demonstrable difference to the number of youth arrests? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the recent multi-agency work that was put in place to support a group of young people who are involved in antisocial and criminal behaviour has made a positive difference to the group of young people. The Divert initiative ran for 6 months and brought together resources from the State's Jersey Police, Children's Social Care, Education, Probation, Health, CAMS, Jersey Youth Service and Skills Jersey to support this small number of children. Through the 6-month period, we analysed the data relating to their involvement in incidences, offences, both as a victim and suspect, arrests, stop searches and missing episodes. The data shows that there's been significant reduction in both the number and severity of incidents involving these young people over the 6-month period. School attendance for the group improved significantly during the course of Divert, from an average of 35 unauthorised absences to 17 at the end of the initiative.
Supplemental, Deputy Alves?
Yes, please, sir. So what plans and resources are going to be in place to support these young people during the summer holidays, for example, where they won't have access to things like school? Thank you, sir.
I thank the Deputy for a question. Just because there's been an improvement doesn't mean these children will fall off the radar of the support that we're putting in place. The partnership approach that we've put in place, we're able to identify the professionals best placed to mentor each of these young people based on the strength of their relationship with the child rather than their professional role, and that will continue to happen.
Well, Deputy Ward.
May I ask the Minister, is data kept on any particular focus of these children in around particular schools? And if so, are those schools given extra funding and resources to help impact on those children's behaviour and keeping them in school, etc., etc.? Because it is that school funding that may be the first port of call. Thank you, sir.
I wouldn't have access to that information due to the sensitivity of the children's knowledge. So I know that all the departments get together. It's about schooling, it's about outside schooling, it's about education. As far as whether there's extra funding, I'm not aware of that myself within the ability to answer that for the Deputy. So.
Supplementary, sir?
Yes, Deputy.
So would the Minister agree that given the very selective nature of our schooling, that it may be that many of the challenging behaviours are faced are focused within particular schools, and therefore identifying that and increasing and targeting funding is perhaps the best way forward to challenge this issue? Would the Minister agree that that would be the right thing to do? And if so, what is he going to do that? Thank you, sir.
So I think the work that we're doing on the education reform, we're doing it on the school funding review, and we're looking at the inclusion review, will also identify areas where there isn't the right level of funding for certain schools. We can't just talk about the children in this instance about that. It has to be looked holistically, and there will be then a plan for more funding that will come to the government plan. The school funding review is also going to be putting in more funding from July to schools where it sees that the funding is utilised in that manner. So the work is already happening to investigate this at a much more holistic way.
I have Deputy Higgins, then Senator Pallett, then final supplementary, Deputy Alves. Deputy Higgins.
Yes, thank you, sir. Can the Minister, following on from my questions to the Home Affairs Minister, tell members whether your success rate involves any of these students who've been subject to the stop and search, in fact, and who are representing 20% of crime?
I can't answer that question. It's not within my gift to have that information. That's to do with the multi-agency work, the police, CAMS and the likes, but not information that I have.
Supplementary, sir?
Yes, sir, Deputy.
Can the Minister ask some general questions then of those who have got that information? He doesn't need to know the individuals concerned, but we need to get a grip on what assistance or help or remedial measures are being used to deal with these particular 20%. Thank you, sir.
So I'd be surprised if this multi-agency work wasn't involved in the 20% or the level that was there. It would make absolute sense to make sure that this work was happening at the area where we're having the most challenged, the children are having the most challenges. So I will ask the question, but I'd be surprised if the answer wasn't yes, it is that level of the children of the island.
Senator Pallett.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the new Minister what his department is doing to ensure that those engaging in antisocial behaviour are not suffering from any mental health issues? And if identified, what support is available for them?
Thank you, sir. Thank the Senator for his question. Obviously, where the initiatives is running, CAM service, the youth service, and health and probation and education are all involved in working together about these children. So if they identify mental health issues that need to be looked at, I'm sure the CAM service will be picking that up within the work they're doing in the multi-agency work.
Supplemental, Senator?
Just a brief one, sir. Could the Minister reassure us that CAMS and the police work closely together to ensure those that are offending are treated in the best possible way to ensure they don't reoffend?
I know that is a priority for CAMS, and I know it's a priority for the police to make sure that we get the right outcomes and that we help these children to get into a better place in their life so they aren't reoffending and that they get the support they require. Nobody in either my department or I'm sure the police want to see a continuation of a degradation in these children's lives.
Final supplementary, Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. The Minister may or may not be aware, but in the past, social workers were actually based in local secondary schools, and a number of schools have voiced their concerns to me that they feel that this is the missing link to ensure that there is joined up thinking with the approach. Can the Minister give us his opinion on this and whether he agrees or would look into maybe reinstating this link back into secondary schools? Thank you, sir.
I would need to look into that. Of course, I'm happy to speak to any heads who feel that they need better services or they need other support services and how that would work. And I'd work with all the departments within children and education to make sure that their voices are heard and we can see a right outcome if that is the right thing to do.
Well, we come now to question 15. The Deputy Southern will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Southern.
Please, sir. Yes. I wasn't expecting a question. I haven't got a copy of my question. Yeah.
Question 15. Deputy Southern asked the following question of the Minister of Treasury and Resources.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Stubbs, sir, as a party member?
Doesn't work that way, I'm afraid, Deputy Ward.
Not yet, sir. Thank you.
Question
15.
15. Thank you, sir. Eventually, what measures, if any, does the Minister have under consideration to establish a more equitable balance of income from taxation between personal and company tax than the current ratio of, I believe, approximately 80% to 20%?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. My officers do not recognise the ratio which has been quoted, which is slightly different from the question which the Deputy has just quoted, by the Deputy or by the media over the last weekend. These ratios omit some... Sorry, there's a big echo, sir.
We can still hear you.
Okay. The ratios omit some significant financial contributions made by companies and other businesses, including employers' social security contributions, international service entity fees, and the GST, which isn't reclaimed by exempt businesses. They also take no account of the substantial amounts of tax paid by Jersey resident shareholders on company profits when they are later paid as dividends. Nor indeed do they take account of the large amounts of business income, for example, from many professionals such as lawyers and accountants working in partnerships, which is counted as personal income tax. In the UK, corporation tax has for the past decade been 9% of the UK's tax take. In Jersey, because of marginal relief, about 90% of Jersey personal taxpayers pay rates of income tax well below 20% and receive tax allowances somewhat greater than those available in nearby jurisdictions. I do not therefore accept the premise that there is an inequity in the balance of our taxation in this respect, although we have long recognised that Jersey may be over-reliant on taxes on labour, which largely falls on businesses, including corporates. Thank you, sir.
Well, supplemental, Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. will the Minister produce a spreadsheet showing the returns from each of those taxes she says are ignored in the figures produced recently in the press?
So we have already working on producing a correction of what was in the press, but of course it's diverting Revenue Jersey officials from the other work that they should be doing, but there will be a correction of those figures. Yes, thank you.
So it won't take very long then. It's already started.
You have the final supplementary at the end, Deputy Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. It is an objective fact, as demonstrated by Statistics Jersey, that since around about the time company tax was abolished for so many businesses on the island, that Jersey has become a much more unequal society. Does the Minister regard that as a coincidence?
No, sir. Corporation tax came in. It is now being investigated very heavily by Revenue Jersey, along with 139 other jurisdictions, which are meeting again tomorrow. But the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 negotiations and discussions are in progress and cannot be commented on. Thank you.
Sir, I'm not really sure what part of that answer was relevant to my question. My question was, does the Minister regard the changes in the balance between personal and company taxation since the introduction of 010 for being responsible, or at least playing a contributory role in the fact we have had growing inequality in the island in that time? If she does regard those issues as being connected, then I'd ask her what would her proposed solution be to that, to ensure that Jersey over time becomes a more fair society and not a less fair society, as has been the case since the introduction of 010.
Minister.
Thank you. I do understand the question, sir, and there was a sharp jump from tax paid by companies to tax paid by individuals in the change for 010. Whether that's classed as inequality is debatable, but we will see, as I did answer the Senator, when the Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 come into operation, that inequality, as he calls it, should level out. Thank you.
Well, I have Deputy Higgins, Deputy Morell, Senator Balwell, then final supplementary, and nothing further to be taken on that. Deputy Higgins.
Yes, sir. I hope the Minister will also correct some of the answers the Treasury Department have given to the states, which also reflect the figures in Deputy Southern's question. The question I'm asking is why, in fact, I was amazed to hear the Minister saying lawyers who work in the finance industry, their income is not included under income for residents, but is included as part of the industry company tax. How can she justify that?
Minister?
I think I said in my opening remarks that many professionals, such as lawyers and accountants who work in partnerships, are personally taxed. So I think that was what I said in the opening remarks. So they pay personal income tax, but they work in partnerships, as opposed to they might work for finance, but they're not part of the finance industry.
Supplemental. Yes, Deputy.
Yes, thank you, sir. How can the Minister justify such a great imbalance, whether those figures that we're talking about at the moment are correct or not? The gap is substantial. How can she justify it?
So I don't think it's actually down to me to justify it, on the basis that I've said that a huge amount of work is ongoing to make a greater equality in the personal tax and company tax situation. The work is being done, so I'm not trying to justify it, otherwise I wouldn't be doing the work. Thank you.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. In the Minister's original answer to Deputy Higgins, she mentioned that there was a review going into an excessive burden on labour taxes paid by businesses. I was wondering if she could elaborate this, because I'm not sure which labour taxes she means, and I would really be keen to understand what she meant by that.
Yes, I'm not quite sure what the deputy means by. I did say labour, which largely falls on businesses. So the working people there in the corporates who are paying corporate taxes, the corporations pay the corporate taxes. But yes, I'm not quite sure where the deputy is coming from on that one.
So if I may help the minister.
Yes, please do.
The minister herself said taxes on labour paid by businesses. Those were approximately the minister's words, and I am asking the minister to explain what she meant by those words.
Well, that would be the companies or corporates' social security contributions, defining labour as that. Yes.
So that's not a tax at all. Thank you, sir. That's a social security contribution. Thank you, sir.
Right. Senator Balwa?
Yes, thank you, sir. Negating the arguments around, or the pedantics around the percentages and the pay from income tax or companies, we know there's been a significant turnaround since 010. Could the minister provide an appropriate message or direction for us as an island, considering this sum that we've paid out from taxpayers' money for support throughout the COVID-19 pandemic to businesses?
Is the senator referring to the co-funded payroll scheme, or the fixed asset contributions, or all of them? I'm not quite sure which one the senator is referring to, sir.
Well, there are a number of schemes that have been in place. I'm not sure whether it's appropriate in the States Assembly for back and forwards in terms of questions, but the minister will be aware that there are a number of schemes in place that do support businesses, and that was the point of my question.
Well,
yes, sir. There have been a number of supports for businesses, which is why I wasn't sure which the senator was referring to. But the co-funded payroll scheme was introduced very, very quickly in March last year and is still continuing in very many sectors, providing businesses can show a detriment as to comparison with last year. There's also the fiscal stimulus fund, which was introduced, which in 2 tranches, and the second tranche has just been agreed and allocated. There's also been the fixed asset scheme. So there's been quite a few of them which have been done, and there will be an analysis of them all provided when they've all been completed.
Supplemental, Senator?
Yes, thank you, sir. I suppose to make it a little bit more clearer in terms of the question I was asking is that, considering the sum of money we've paid out to businesses throughout a very difficult period in time with COVID-19, bearing in mind majority of taxpayers' money now is paid through personal income tax or GST, what assurance or what thought process is the minister considering around how the fairness of that affects the way the economy is driven in Jersey?
Thank you. I think the whole schemes have been very fairly appointed. They've all been overseen by individual and independent boards to make sure that each were treated equally. And it's really to help the individuals and companies to make a recovery in the current situation.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Sutton.
Thank you, sir. Given that we reduced the level of company tax from 20% to either 0 on some companies and 10% on the banks, is it not time, given the impact of COVID upon our economy, that we took some of that tax back and increased in some way the tax on companies, in order that our society may continue in a fairly healthy state?
This may well happen in answer to the Deputy's question, but we are, as I said earlier, in negotiations with the OECD and can't comment any further on those negotiations, but there is another meeting tomorrow, so hopefully we'll have a conclusion fairly soon as to where companies' tax eventually ends up. Thank you.
Well, we now come to question 16. The Deputy Morell will ask the Minister for Home Affairs. Deputy Morell.
Sir, thank you. I will withdraw my question if you don't mind, sir, just because it's very, very similar to Deputy Higgins' question earlier. And there's no doubt the Minister has asked many, many questions today. So with that in mind, I'll withdraw it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We then come to question 17 that Senator Mesnick will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Senator.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether she or her department have been involved in any discussions with state-owned entities about the whole or partial sale of these businesses or their subsidiaries since this term of office began? And will the Minister provide the details of any such options being considered at this moment?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I would like to reassure members that during my tenure in office, I have not considered the sale of any shares held by the States of Jersey in the principal holding companies that are 100% owned, nor of the majority owned companies, for instance, the Jersey Electricity Company and Jersey Water. The sale by Jersey Telecom of the majority stake in JT IoT, which is a reminder is the Internet of Things Limited, was a disposal of shares owned by the JT Group, not shares owned by the States of Jersey. The only other material sales of businesses are with respect to the operations of the States of Jersey Development Company during my period of office. And strictly speaking, these SOJDC disposals are not sales of businesses, but since the Senator refers to the sale of subsidiaries in his question, I will clarify a little further. Construction projects are generally ring-fenced in subsidiary Jersey companies, and when a development is completed and sold, it is the Jersey company that is sold rather than the building itself. Examples of this would be the two International Finance Centre building developments. The other smaller sale was the disposal of the Worldstone business by JT in 2020, which the Senator will be aware was discussed during the presentation of JT's annual results to members on the 14th and 15th of June. This disposal has been highlighted in the most recent strategic business plans that are approved by the Assistant Minister under his delegated authority. There are no other options for specific disposals being considered at the moment, and I'm in regular dialogue with the respective states-owned entity boards on their investment strategies, but again, these do not currently include any disposals. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental, Senator.
Thank you, sir. There was a reasonable amount in that answer that I found reassuring. Can the Treasury Minister therefore confirm that for the rest of her term in office as Treasury Minister, that she will not support the sale of or disposal of shares in our state-owned entities and everything that goes along with that?
Yes, sir, as far as I can say, bearing in mind we didn't anticipate COVID, so we don't know what we're going to anticipate, but as far as I'm concerned, sir, yes, I would not consider any disposal of any of the state-owned entities.
Deputy Tallier.
Thank you, sir. I'm concerned that the Minister may be reasonably accused of sophistry in one of her earlier answers, sir, when she said that it was only a subsidiary that got sold off, therefore it didn't need to come to the States and we don't need to worry about it. Could she confirm that the JT IoT was 100% States owned? Could you just confirm that first of all?
No, sir. I've made it very clear that the IoT division or subsidiary of JT was owned by JT. The infrastructure of the utility company of JT Group is owned by the states, not the subsidiaries or divisions.
So,
supplemental, Deputy.
So is it can I just ask the Minister, if we own JT and JT owned a subsidiary before it was sold, does that not mean that we effectively owned the subsidiary?
No, it doesn't, sir. It's a business, and it creates its own innovative outlets, of which this was one, which we all knew about. It was incubated, for want of a better word, in 2014. It has grown substantially ever since, with a huge amount of interest, as I mentioned in answer to a previous question, from global bidders in purchasing it, and it was advised by 2 independent companies that it was the right time to sell it. But that is to the JT board. It is not part of the infrastructure, which is what's owned by the Jersey public.
Well, Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. And my question is very similar to Deputy Teddy's. I find it incredulous that if a company is owned by JT, that it is not owned by the states as a whole. And I can't, will the Minister accept that any investments or selling of investments that the company has made in these various subsidiaries could affect the overall performance of JT, and therefore all states members should have a right to say? And I make the point again, I had no problem with that sale, but it's the fundamental principle of who is accountable to whom.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. That's why we have a board, and a very, very capable, competent board chairman who makes these decisions, and the company are accountable to the shareholder in as much as how they distribute the income from the sale, which is a cash asset, if you want to put it that way, and we will be overseeing how that is spent. But as I, risk of repetition, mentioned in a previous answer, there are debts that JT need to clear, which will be paid off by this sale, and there will be a dividend which is returned to the taxpayer.
Supplemental, Deputy Higgins?
Yes, sir. Does the Minister think that it has no oversight of the board and shouldn't be looking at its investments, and we could argue sort of disinvestment in one sense, that they should be considered by the Treasury Department, or are you just letting them go totally hands-free?
Totally not going hands-free. As the Deputy will be aware, the Assistant Minister for Treasury and Resources sits on the board, and it would have been a better directed question at him, but under standing order, whatever it is, I have to answer. However, he is very much part of all of this and has kept me informed. This is Deputy Ash, has kept me informed all the way through it, and it may be a certain surprise to the Assembly, but that was unavoidable because of the commercial sensitivity of the sale.
Well, I have Deputy St Mary, then Deputy Southern, and the final supplementary. No further questions on this one. Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. And simply, of course, we're talking about sale of state assets. Will, for clarification purposes, the Minister please confirm that in relation to Ports of Jersey, the MOU specifically provides that any sale of property will not take place without prior approval of the State Assembly. Thank you.
Yes, sir, that would be of state's property. This is not. This was a subsidiary of the JT Group, and the JT Group remains 100% intact as ownership by the states.
Minister,
yes, sir.
Yes, I thank the Minister for that confirmation. I wasn't actually challenging it, but would she agree maybe that the MOUs which are in the course of being prepared for all state entities should, as has been promised before, be sent to the relevant scrutiny committees, scrutiny panels for review before they're finally executed? Thank you.
Of course, we can do that. Yes, they will be.
Deputy Southern.
Can the Minister just clarify for me that the subsidiary of JT has done very well and made lots of money? for its owners. How much is the question I was asking? How much of that will come back to the states as dividend, and how does it compare with what dividend we were getting previously from JT? Will the minister now commit to bringing the figures, including the expenses for the company and the overall dividend, to this House in the shortest possible time?
Minister.
Yes, of course I will, sir. But as I said before, that it was going to be 2 weeks to iron out all the details of the transaction from the date of the signing of the contract. So within 2 weeks, we'll be able to bring back the final details. But it is not, as I keep saying, it's not for approval by the States Assembly. This is a commercial sale and a restructuring of the company. And the dividend that's paid back to the taxpayer will become public knowledge in the space of the next 2 weeks.
Supplementary, Deputy Sutherland?
And so it will be, by the time we see these figures, it will be too late to change anything. And if that dividend is £500,000 or it's 5 million or 50 million pounds, then we won't be able to say one way or the other, that was a good deal you did. Is that the case?
It is not, I'm afraid, Deputy, at the risk of repetition, it's not a state's decision. It is a subsidiary of JT, and the board of JT have made this decision with the agreement of Treasury and Exchequer, and there will be a return to the state's purse or the public purse, but we don't know exactly what that figure is yet.
Final supplementary, Senator Mezey.
Thank you, sir. I sought with this question to try to get assurances from the Treasury Minister that there will be no privatisation on her watch. And in interpreting her previous answers, I think that that assurance has been given. Could she just make one final clarification that my interpretation of those answers was right, and that for the rest of this term of office, there will be no privatisation of our state-owned entities beyond, of course, the IoT sale, which has been the subject of questions today?
Yes, I can reassure the Senator there will be no privatisation, and that does not compare with the sale of IoT because it leaves intact Jersey Telecoms Group, which is the state's-owned entity. Thank you.
Well, we come to question 18. The Deputy Higgins will ask of the Assistant Chief Minister. Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain to members the actual, i.e. to date, and projected financial costs of any delay in determining whether the projected changes to Westmount Road and the area around the People's Park goes ahead?
Thank you, sir. To date, the requirement of amendment to the second amendment, sir, to P123/2020, which was the proposition to decide the location of the site selection of the new hospital, sir, that amendment was to undertake a full options appraisal of access routes for our hospital project, sir, created approximately a 3-month delay in the design, sir. But this has not significantly delayed the overall project completion timetable, as where possible, sir, the project work streams have been progressed concurrently. And this has somewhat mitigated against the delays experienced and any additional costs occurred, sir. And I would stress that currently the overall project remains on target for completion at the end of 2026, and within the budget that will be coming to the states for approval in September. But to answer directly the deputy's questions, by managing carefully the ongoing programme of works with the design and delivery partner, we have avoided significant additional cost, and it's estimated that approximately £100,000 to date of additional cost has been incurred because of that delay. Costs in relation to the delay of the start of the building projects could be, it's estimated to be £100,000 a day, sir, and a breakdown of those costs was included in the in an answer to a question on the 29th of June, sir. Thank you.
Well, supplemental, Deputy Higgins.
Yes, sir. I thank the Minister for the 100,000 figure, which is considerably less than I've been led to believe. Can I ask what a further delay, how much in determining whether the road will be used or not, will add to the project?
We've speaking to the project team, sir, who are working very closely and very hard with the design and delivery partners. If we can deliver all of the design, the design search of planning application by early November at the latest, and receive planning approval within 6 months, which could be by the end of May, sir, then we don't see significant additional costs. The team are working extremely hard with the delivery partners to keep things on schedule and on budget, sir. If we don't get planning permission by then, and it moves over into PERDA or into the next session of the state, sir, then we're into the territory where we could be incurring costs of about £3 million a month, which is a cost of retaining the design and delivery partner past those dates.
Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. I find some of the answers in relation to this major project rather contradictory. We've heard from the Assistant Minister, well, the Deputy Chief Minister, that the project remains on target. So the question is, why was an extra £18 million needed under R105? And it's not good enough, I don't believe, to argue the fact that politically, or whether it's a parish expectation, that those risks are taken on board within a major project. So can the Deputy Chief Minister openly and transparently explain how and why we're incurring these costs at the rate that we are, and whether actually we're being too ambitious for the project that we're expecting to see delivered by 26?
Yes, thank you, sir. We're not incurring any additional costs. The changes are to the timing. All and every cost that we talk about in the project, sir, is within the maximum estimated figure of 804.5 million, sir, which with a proposition we will be coming to the states with for debate in September, to ask the states to approve that budget, sir, and to approve the funding of it. So all of the costs are within that budget. There's no additional costs, sir, above that, and that budget does include significant amounts of contingency and optimism bias, sir. And I do undertake on behalf of the Oversight Group and the government, sir, to be as transparent as possible, sir, as we have been, and by putting every scrap of information we have available into the public domain, sir, and breaking that down to simple explanation where required.
Supplemental, Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'd like to challenge the Deputy Chief Minister on the argument that it's no extra money. If that's the case, with all the requirements under our Public Finances Law and Public Finances Manual, why it was required that we had to transfer £18 million from other capital projects to the hospital project, when it should have been, if it was appropriately identified, within the government plan?
So as I've said, sir, this is to do with the timing of the spend, sir, and this is to keep the team working, sir, and to get the project to the next stage, sir. I think it might be an idea to provide, we've got some plans for further updates for states members. Be quite happy to provide a complete breakdown of how that works out, sir, to states members. But it's all about, as I said before, sir, the timing and ensuring we have the money allocated to keep going past that stage. We're planning this project, so we're running a number of work streams of the project concurrently, sir, to keep to the challenging time schedule of having the hospital opened, new hospital open and fully commissioned by the end of 2026, sir. And we're doing that simply because after that date, the costs of maintaining the original site start to grow exponentially. So I think we're very pleased to provide further briefing to states members and provide the exact breakdown, sir, of all of the current figures, how the budgets are working, sir, and we'll do that prior to obviously the debate in September, but after lodging the proposition, which we're due to do by the middle of July, sir.
Very much, Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister aware of any risks from the project team with regard to the affordability of the project?
Does she means, are we aware of the risk of the project costing more than 800 million?
Have any concerns about this point being raised with the Minister?
No, sir. Our hospital team and project team are determined to deliver the project within the budgets already estimated. So, however, I think I have to be straight with the Assembly. The cost of the inflationary costs and the costs of building materials is under significant pressure following Brexit, sir, and following the global pandemic. I mean, we do have generous amounts of optimism, bias and contingency programmed into the budget, sir, but we are watching those global pressures very, very closely. But currently, sir, we are still estimating to deliver within our original financial envelope.
Well, supplemental, Senator Moore?
No, thank you.
Deputy Higgins, final supplementary. Oh, I beg your pardon. I've noted a question from Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask 2 follow-ups from the previous questions, if possible. The first one is how Deputy Chief Minister is assured that the inflation in Brexit will not affect that we will go above 804 million envelope.
So the advice we're getting from the Our Hospital project team, sir, is despite those pressures, we are currently still on target to work within those budgets, sir.
And one follow-up, just to reconfirm that it will be lodged in the middle of July to the attention of the Assembly, the financial case.
Sorry, sir, I think in my eagerness to give a date, I miscalculated, sir. It has to be lodged in time for the first debate in September, sir. So I think that's probably towards the end of July, the beginning of August at the latest. But we would like to lodge the proposition as soon as we possibly can to give members and scrutiny, of course, as much time as possible to work on it.
Final supplementary, Deputy Higgins.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I hope the Assistant Chief Minister will arrange for a new special briefing for states members. And I hope he'd be totally transparent on the figures. I might add, I'm confused on the figures. Other states members are. We're getting conflicting information, and we need to finally get on one piece of paper almost what the exact figures are. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. That message is received loud and clear, sir. And the proposition on the funding, on the budget approval, sir, and the financing we'll present to states members. I very much hope that will clear up any misunderstanding or further questions members will have, sir, and I undertake to do that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Very well, we come to question 19. The Deputy Tallier will ask the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Tallier.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain why states members were not advised of the sale of JT's majority stake in the Internet of Things division to a private equity investor prior to it happening, and state whether or not the States is able to challenge and rescind that decision?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. There is an important distinction to be made between the sale of shares in a principal company owned by the States of Jersey, as defined by Article 32 brackets 2A of the Telecommunications Jersey Law 2002, and the sale of part or all of a subsidiary business owned by a principal company. The power to dispose of the shares in a principal company may only be exercised by the states. Under the Public Finances Jersey Law 2019, the states has assigned to me responsibility to, quote, exercise the rights attached to shares in a company, wherever incorporated, that are owned by the states in the name of the states, end of quote. In addition, the relationship with the states-owned entities is governed by Memoranda of Understanding, and under the provisions of these MOUs, which are not legally binding, the sale of material assets by a SOE, states-owned entity, require my consent. The disposal of the majority stake in J2 IoT Limited is considered as the sale of a material asset, and my approval was sought under the MOU requirements. Confidentiality throughout this process was key. Competitive tension was maintained between the various bidders, and the ultimate result is one which our independent consultants have described, and I quote again, an exceptional position and a deal that far exceeds initial expectations. The relationship with the SOEs is one that was created to allow the vital components of the island's infrastructure to be managed commercially and by experts in the appropriate field, with proper oversight from the shareholder. The sale of the majority stake in a deal that exceeded initial expectations has demonstrated the value of a successful relationship between the SOEs and the Minister for Treasury and Resources as representative shareholder. My understanding is that the contracts between JT and the purchaser are legally binding, and any attempt to unwind them will result in significant cost by JT and potentially the states as shareholder. It would create the risk of long-running litigation. That said, I hope all members appreciate the long-term benefits of this transaction to Jersey and its digital sector in the future. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy Taddy.
Thanks, sir. That hasn't answered the second part of my question, sir. I don't know if I can challenge that understanding order so as to not have to use a supplementary to get that information.
I think in terms of time available, I must ask you to use a supplementary question.
So
you have a supplementary question now if you wish to use it.
I used supplementary, sir, but just noting my dissatisfaction. Does the Minister agree that it was a political decision that was ultimately required about whether to sell what seems to be a successful company, and that a political argument could be made to retain shares and ownership, full ownership of a very successful subsidiary? So my question is, did the Minister, did the company need the Minister's approval in order to sell this part of the company?
Well, I think the Minister answered that question by saying that she was asked, and she was required to be asked because it was a material asset.
So I don't think she clarified. She said that under the MOU they consulted her, and I'm not clear on whether it's simply a concept.
Yes, Minister.
Yes, so I can answer that. It was a business decision, not a political one, but because it was a division of JT, which, as I keep saying, is still 100% owned by the shareholder, which is the States of Jersey, it had to go through Treasury and Exchequer and myself as shareholder, current shareholder, to be agreed. But it was the decision was business based, not political.
Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the Minister when she was made aware of the news which has been announced this afternoon that the CEO of JT would be standing down to take on a role heading up the now privatised Internet of Things? When was she made aware of that? Yeah, I'll ask us that question, sir.
Yes, Minister.
Thank you, sir. I was made aware of that about 10 days ago, but it was not public because the staff were only informed yesterday, hence the media release being under embargo until today. Thank you.
Supplementary, Senator?
I think I'll need time to think of supplementaries to that. It's quite a big deal.
Yes. Senator Balwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. Can I ask the Minister how the difference between the contracts for such shareholding properties that we have and the expectations of the public for telecoms, and we're in a quite unique position compared to other jurisdictions with regards to telecoms, but we have an MOU and the States Assembly have given you the power to ensure that the expectations are derived within that MOU in an appropriate manner. So how, with regards to the answers you've given around the contracts and business arguments determined against the political aspiration and expectations of this government?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. That's quite a lot of questions. I can hardly remember where the start came. The MOU, as I answered in a previous question, is not legally binding, but as shareholder, then the final decision rests with the Minister for Treasury and Resources as shareholder. But as I have said, this was a sale of a division of the infrastructure of JT, not the infrastructure, and will be a huge input. Not only is it fantastic for Jersey business, and as the Senator rightly pointed out, we have a massive reputation globally. Jersey has, second only to Singapore for our connectivity ratings. This sale will allow for more injection of revenue into or income into that side of the part of the structure of the business. So it's a very good decision to have been made, but made by the board and just approved by the shareholder. I'm not sure if that answers all the questions, but thank you.
Supplementary, Senator Balwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. I apologise for the number of questions. Maybe the Minister...
Standing orders do require that a question should only deal with one thing. There shouldn't be a lot of supplemental questions within it, but I allowed it to go at this point, but just for future guidance.
Well,
yes.
I believe, sir, much of the question was the same thing, which is why the supplementary that I'm going to ask, sir, is the Minister referred to a division of JT. So could the Minister explain how that works in the demography of Jersey Telecoms in terms of the memorandum of understanding and the shareholder expectations that the public have with regards to the ownership of Jersey Telecoms?
Thank you, sir. The shareholder expectations will not change. In fact, they'll be enhanced because there will be a dividend return from the sale of the subsidiary IoT. So there'll be a return to the taxpayer. So there'll be an increase in the dividend. It will not change the dividend that comes in. However, the investment now can be made because of the sale into the infrastructure will increase in the future the dividend that's returned to the public. Thank you.
Well, I have Deputy Morell, then the Connétable St John, then final supplementary if there's time. I'm afraid there won't be time for any others. There's only 2 minutes to run.
So
Deputy
should we
Morell?
not revert to the, should I not get the final supplementary if there's
Yes,
time?
yes, you would get the final supplementary
Just checking.
unless we run out of time, Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister clarify, because I couldn't quite understand the answer to her question, was she made aware of the intention of the Chief Executive of Jersey Telecom to resign and move to this IoT company in advance or at the time of being consulted on about the sale of this asset, sir?
I thought, sir, I already answered that. I was made aware of it about 8 to 10 days ago, and it's not sort of necessarily resigning, it's transferring. And as I say, it had to be maintained under the radar, for want of a better word, until such time as the contract had been signed and that the staff at Jersey Telecoms were told of the move from one part of JT to the IoT.
Sir, if I may, the question was she aware before or at the time of consultation? 8 or 10 days does not explain to me whether it was before she was consulted on or at the time of being consulted. That's the thing I'm interested in understanding, sir.
Sorry, sir, I don't understand. The time of consultation on what part of all of this?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid the time allocated for questions has now come to an end. Deputy Southern, it's not possible to raise a point of clarification during question time. That's clarification of speeches where members can give way or otherwise, I'm afraid. We've run out of time. I beg your pardon? Yeah. And we've run out of time and therefore question period comes to an end. Sorry? Easiest for you? From down there. So the Greffier will take over the chair for a short while.
That completes questions with notice. We now move to questions without notice, and the first period is questions for the Minister for the Environment. First on the list, Deputy Tadier.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, Mum. The question is both specific in that there's an example but generic about a question of what powers the Minister chooses to exercise. It regards a section of wall that the Minister should be aware of. I've written to him in the past, opposite Pontmarquet Estate in the run-up to Maison St. Brelard, where the wall has been in a state of disrepair as long as I can remember. And not only is it unsightly, and I believe brings down the image of the area, but it's also potentially dangerous with jagged edges. Is the Minister aware of this, and what action could he propose to take to request the owner of that land to repair that wall?
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy, for his question. Obviously, I live fairly close to that area. I should have noticed the wall. I have to confess I haven't. It's not unusual for walls, I'm afraid, particularly those of granite nature, to be in various states of disrepair. And of course, there are no funding mechanisms available to support landowners in maintaining them, and it really is a matter for private landowners. What power does the Minister have? Well, I think in extremis there is a requirement, there is a situation in planning law of serving notice, what I call a site condition notice. But I think, frankly, I will follow this up, but I'd have thought it's going to be very, very difficult to substantiate in that sort of situation. Generally, it is the most severe case of severe eyesores and damage that those notices would apply. And of course, there's a right of appeal to that matter.
Supplementary, Deputy Tadier.
Yeah, I do have a supplementary. I'm slightly disappointed that we would wait until something becomes completely dilapidated and an eyesore. But I suppose the more general point is that we are still a tourist island, and there are probably more examples in central St Helier of buildings that should be real cultural assets and historical gems, if you like, which are being left to dilapidate. And I think the powers which the Minister or his officers have are not being used even softly with a carrot versus stick to have those conversations. So does the Minister agree that more could be done, at least to make the owners aware that the law does exist, and to have those conversations to try and get the shabby areas of town and my district looking a bit nicer?
I think, well, I do agree that there are many examples around the island. where we have really valuable assets, particularly heritage ones, where the owners are struggling to maintain them. And indeed, there are no systems of financial support available whatsoever. I certainly have discussed with my team an example where we can bring forward funding to provide some limited funding of at least a grant arrangement to provide that. But I think there's no question about it. I'm afraid this is a political choice. My personal approach as a minister has not been to initiate what you might call an overly heavy-handed approach. One tries to do things by persuasion and support, but it is possible that we can, that future, a future assembly or members could want to upgrade that to a much more aggressive stance. But I think you would likely to get a lot of negative reaction to do that. I have to say at the moment, the planning system is under great stress from the level of issues that are being arising, and that's why I'm certainly discussing with the Council of Ministers under our government plan to strengthen resources to help us do this and some of this work to upgrade it in the future, which I hope will put a minister in a better position in the future. Thank you, sir.
Next, I have the Constable of St John.
Thank you. Following is on to my written question 219/2021 about testing of seawater at Bonwy. Can the Minister confirm when the last review on usage was made at Bonwy and over what period of time?
No, so I can't. What I've asked to do is obviously the Constable has brought that matter forward. The answer that I gave him is based on practice at the moment. I've certainly taken on board, and I did in my response to his question, that we will review that. And in fact, today there's a meeting scheduled, but I think is due to happen very, very shortly, when we'll be able to have the water pollution officers around the table, and we'll try and find some solution to this issue. But at the moment, I can't give him that exact detail, sir, but I undertake to provide it.
Supplementary question, Conatable.
Yes, please. Does the Minister agree with me that it is not acceptable to have a bay with a sewage treatment works where the seawater is not monitored on a regular basis, regardless of usage?
My understanding, sir, is that, ma'am, is that this is private treatment work, and of course the reality is that in many parts of the island which are not served by main drainage systems, and of course that I think is a matter which is of, I think, something we really need to put right. We need to increase the availability of main drains, but that means that a lot of premises and properties are having to rely on private drainage systems where there are failures that occur of maintenance. In which case the water pollution team are onto those as effectively as they can and take remedial action. But in this particular case, I'm going to have to defer to that meeting to look at this particular matter in more detail, because it isn't right. It's an offence under the law to pollute the marine environment for any reason.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to ask the Minister my question that was on the order paper, so we may as well have the chance to do that. Given that Jersey census analysis and education estate review are not going to be available before amendments to the Bridging Island Plan 2022-25 are due to be lodged, will the Minister advise what flexibility, if any, will be permitted to consider amendments informed by this data that was submitted after the 12th of July 2021 deadline? Thank you, sir.
Yes, I thank the Deputy for his question. Absolutely, yes, that there will be information come to light after that date for members' amendments, most particularly the census, where we're not expected to get even provisional information until the end of the year and the first report in Q1. And of course, I'm hopeful, as we all are, that the education estate review will report earlier than that. But nonetheless, the system has been designed, the process and the law that order I made to provide the flexibility for states members to deal with that. So the situation is, it's set out in the law that after the 12th of May, that members will have an opportunity for amendments to be published after the planning inspector's report, and any issues that's been raised by states members and representation. So I'm satisfied that there is the opportunity there, and the timescales for that are set down in the law, which I'm happy to circulate to members, which I was going to do anyway. So the flexibility is there.
Supplementary, Deputy Ward.
Yes, please, ma'am. May I ask, given the importance of the Education State Review, can I ask the Minister why he believes that was not produced in tandem with the Island Bridging Plan or before the Island Bridging Plan, given that there is so little on education in the Island Bridging Plan? Does he not feel that is a real gap in the information that we have, particularly in the centre of St Helier and for St Helier children? Thank you, sir. Mal.
I think my position is certainly working through both the process of preparing working with the officers on the draft plan, and as we are now, I have been disappointed that we haven't had a greater clarity, or we haven't had any clarity on the provision of schools in the town area, because the plan is for a 3-year period, 4 years in all, and of course we are going to see more children, the need for children's schools in town, and my understanding is that what's being told at the moment is that there is a need for both a school site on the eastern part of town and on the southern part of town as well, but exactly what sites they are. And so I do think, again, I think it should be possible for when we see that report, which I hope is available very quickly, we can look at the island plan and see how we can factor that in the policies that I think come forward to the states. So it's not ideal, but I think we can work with it.
Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, Mark. Will the Minister advise the Assembly of his reasons for rescinding his decision to hold a public inquiry into the development of the Mayfair Hotel and Ann Street Brewery sites? Thank you.
Yes, I think it's a good question. Obviously, what I was concerned about when we were faced with 2 applications, both the Mayfair Hotel site and also the Ann Street sites as well. And of course, they're very close together, if not contiguous. And I thought there was no question that would become a very, very substantial, practically I can't remember the exact numbers, but it would get towards 500 homes in that one location. And so anyway, when I was advised that the application was going to be withdrawn for Ann Street, I think the advice I took from the officers, and I accept this, it didn't meet not meet the requirement of, if you like, stepped over that threshold for needing a one-off planning inquiry. Because as a minister, one has to make a judgment between what you let go through to the planning committee, and I got great confidence in the planning committee, and those which you think there were bigger issues applied. And I think that's not I have to also recognise that the pressure for homes is pretty strong, and one doesn't want to trigger delays unnecessarily.
Minister, we have 4 minutes left, and I have 6 members who wish to ask questions. So can I ask your answer to the questions to be a little bit more concise going forward? Deputy Ayer, do you have no supplementary? Constable St-Brelard.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, sorry. Would the Minister advise members what stimulated the deferral of the implementation of the TECA agreement, where it applies to EU fishing vessels, for a further 3 months?
A letter that came from the EU to the UK, which I was asked to respond to. It went to our lawyers who advised on it. The report I had was that there is a constructive understanding going on, and we are starting to get a decent dialogue through the diplomatic channels. And I did not want to light the blue touch paper and escalate the issues without having the opportunity to pursue that. And also we got more information, although it wasn't long enough, but nonetheless it's starting to move.
Supplementary, ma'am.
Supplementary.
Has he considered the impact on our local fishing fleet and our fish stocks by so doing?
Well, absolutely. Part of the offer that we made is to require that, and it's a condition, that we get the information about what fish is being taken out of our waters. That's absolutely a condition without which we can't monitor the water. What have I done? I've spoke to the JFA president before we had made that decision, and I spoke to him yesterday. And I think there is an understanding, a reluctant understanding. All of us is reluctant. This is not a willing thing we do, but it's the only practical way forward.
Next on the list, I have Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll ask a very specific question rather than go on the one I was going to do. In terms of neighbours who have very large trees, can the minister tell me what the height restriction is for any large trees that are blocking the light to a neighbouring property, and whether raised ground is also taken into account?
Raised ground, anybody raising the land level on their land requires a planning application unless it's a de minimis piece of work. Trees will be dealt with by the High Hedges Law, and that sets out the guidance on the heights and so on. It depends on the actual situation. I will make sure the deputy has that information about those limits.
Do you have a supplementary, Deputy Higgins?
Yes, very quickly. Will he check why his department haven't acted on the raised ground which those trees have been put on, when they had previously said it was a breach? Thank you, sir.
I've already agreed, sir, to the ma'am that will be done, and I've spoken to the householder concerned and advised that I've asked for that to be done.
Thank you, Minister. Next up, I have Senator Valois.
Thank you, ma'am. Minister, in terms of the role of the planning inspector, there have been concerns raised with me around whether that can or cannot be an employee of the States of Jersey. Could the minister confirm whether that is the case or not?
The change that we had to do to the law to remove that exclusion was a technical one only, and it's purely because we have the inability from a memory to recruit inspectors, and we need to be able to, if we can't get the inspectors, we can't hold it square. I will promise the senator a fuller answer because I'm struggling to remember the detailed reasons why we had to do that law, but I will advise her separately.
That draws to an end our period of questions for the Minister for the Environment. Next up, I'm aware that there is, I think, a bit of an error on the consolidated order paper. There's some confusion as to who is up next for for questions without notice for ministers. I have on my list External Relations and Financial Services, but I believe that it could also be Housing and Communities. I'm not sure.
I think it's Housing and Communities.
Are you expecting to be answering questions, Deputy Labby? Excellent. Well, we will go with you. Next up, we have 15 minutes of questions without notice for the Minister for Housing and Communities. First up is the Conotab of St Helier.
Thank you, ma'am. Would the Minister explain how he's going to juggle the competing demands for amenity space and housing on such brownfield sites as become available to the states to purchase?
Well, if we look at let's look at examples like the north of town cluster, especially as it is the Conotab of St Helier who's asked the question. And Andiam have already juggled that quite neatly with the old brewery site. That application has been taken in so they can improve it even more. But there's a woodland in there. There is green areas. I think Andiam have made a sensible decision to just bring that back to try and comply a little bit more with comments from the Jersey Architects Commission and also concerns from Historic Environment. But they haven't just looked at that site in isolation. They've looked, of course, at the problem they had, the disaster with no approval for the gas place thing, and looked at it as an opportunity. And members might have seen plans for that whole area to be parkland, which would be fantastic for the area. And I think that obviously, there's an education review, and it's probably, I haven't been briefed on that yet. That comes at the end of the week. It's likely that they would be looking at that site, but I'm sure we'll get a lot more park there. But it's not just about the park either. It's about green pathways. It's about putting children first, obviously, and making sure they have space to grow and develop and social places to socialise. But it's the green pathways that link the park, their schools, their shops they want to go to, and their homes, which is so important. We might even get a green pathway over St Saviour's Road and up to the schools at the top of Montmilley. But yeah, I've always been a proponent of it. My first term was defined by my fight for a pocket park at Laconet Low Rise, so I'm fully on board.
Do you have a supplementary question, Conotab?
Yes, please, Ma'am. I'm pleased that the Minister said that he thinks the idea of extending the town park is fantastic. Would he agree with me that this may be a unique opportunity to get marriage value in the existing Millennium Town Park, which is, although wonderfully used, is extremely small for the number of residents and visitors that it has to cater for? And so would he support the extension of the Millennium Town Park across the whole of the Jersey Gas site, subject to those obvious criteria being met?
Yes, I would, absolutely. If you look at that park in the summer on hot days, you can hardly move on it. It's a massively important amenity. And when you think about the extra units that are going along St Saviour's Road through to Green Street, it's essential for that density. And of course, the former warehouse Play.com site. Any town planner would look at the map and tell you, put that in park. If a school or some of a school goes there, well, that's needed too. But I think we desperately need to increase the size of that park.
Next up, the Deputy of St Martin.
Thank you, Ma'am. Could I just ask the Minister about affordable homes? I know he has to provide affordable homes for young families. Can he just explain very quickly his knowledge of modern methods of construction, because that will be absolutely essential to finding ways to finding homes being affordable. Thank you.
Well, I could not agree with the Deputy of St Martin more. It's absolutely something we must scope now. It's been talked about an awful lot. In case people are wondering what we're talking about, it's MMC. We're talking about homes effectively constructed elsewhere in frame form and then assembled in the location. So I'm asking Deputy of St Peter, who's done some work on this, and the Deputy of St Martin, who's done some work on this, and the Constable of St Mary, to join with me in a working party, a short, sharp exercise to look at the viability and feasibility. Because if we can, using the Deputy of St Peter's figures, if we can get a three-bedroom house to Portsmouth Docks for under £100,000, and if we can get it over that expensive stretch of water, build the foundations, assemble it with a construction partner here, buy the site, of course, but these sites will have to be at affordable home prices. If we can do that too for under £100,000, we get 3-bed unit for under £200,000 or thereabouts, that will help us with affordability, absolutely. So it's being done elsewhere absolutely brilliantly. These aren't flat pack homes that are substandard. These are top quality, highly insulated, really well manufactured, and that's what I'm looking at, and I would really love to bring forward.
Supplementary, please, ma'am.
Indeed, but can I remind the Minister also that concise answers are required? We've got a few people wanting to ask questions. Minister, sorry, supplementary, Deputy of St Martin.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm really grateful for the Minister's answer, and I look forward hugely to working with him on this problem which affects so many islanders. But can I just ask him very quickly, does he also share my enthusiasm for shared equity in perpetuity? So just another string in the bow of making these houses affordable.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been to, on my trip around the parishes in preparation for the Island Plan, I've been to Trinity and heard all about that scheme, and I think they're excellent. Yeah.
Next up on the list, I have Deputy Masson.
Thank you, Ma'am. Whilst we know it's a smaller section of the housing stock, but a proportion nonetheless, does the Minister have a plan or strategy to deal with habitable but vacant properties? Thank you.
Well, I have a budget allocation of £500,000 for work on this. At the moment, I'm at capacity with all my priorities, but I do have an idea. I do have a plan that I would like to see work. We're way behind other jurisdictions. In the UK, if you leave a property empty for 2 years, your council tax gets whacked up 50%, and that figure's going to rise. There is also other enforcement measures, but there is also an initiative called No Use Empty, and I'd like to see a No Use Empty Jersey initiative. It might, and I'm hoping that the new Strategic Housing and Regeneration team will help me scope this. I'm hoping that we might be able to make that a trust or charity and make it a community initiative.
Do you have a supplementary, Deputy?
Yes, and can the Minister provide us with any type of timeline that he was working to?
Well, I've got half a million, $250,000 available from 2022 for this project, and in 2023 another $250,000 for the half a million. I want to scope it, set it up, and hopefully get it running by the time I leave office in 2022.
Next up, I have Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, ma'am. The Minister has numerous priorities, but he did promise by July to come back and tell us what he's going to do about the digital register of commercial and residential properties, so we can find out who owns what. It's almost July. What can the Minister tell us?
No, that wasn't a promise I gave. The responsibility for the P93, the Deputy Higgins' P93, has only just landed in my lap with just a few weeks ago. So I wouldn't have made that sort of promise. Well, I'm very sympathetic with Deputy Higgins, because when states makes a decision, it should be actioned. The trouble is this one hasn't been. There is no money for it this year. There's no resources for it, officer time this year. It could cost 0.5 million. We have to work it out. We have to work how we're going to gather this information, who is going to gather this information, what is going to be done with it when it is gathered. It is a data protection nightmare, but I will try to get the money for it and the resources for it for 2022. I will try to do that so that work starts on it in 2022. It's not a promise, but I will give it my best shot.
Supplementary.
Higgins, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. Does the Minister accept that people have failed us on this one, considering it was passed in September of last year and should have been actioned by now, and it was supposed to be actioned by the end of this year?
Well, the Deputy has made his point. I take it.
Next up on the list, I have Senator Belwa.
Yes, thank you, Mum. There's been much made over this particular term around regulation and responsibility for estate agents and the role they play with regards to the market in terms of rents and buying property within the island. What is the Minister's view and dedication to ensuring the appropriate regulation for estate agents, and also in mind from that the rents policy for the 90% market rent that is determined by an unregulated entity?
The Jersey Estate Agents Association want to see, and have been calling for some time, to ensure, they want to see regulation to ensure that people working as estate agents in the island have a qualification. It's an equivalent A-level qualification, but have a qualification, and I support them. And I'd like to see. I think we get a lot of problems. Or there are problems occasionally with gazumping. I was talking to the chairman of the Jersey Estate Agents Association just recently. He said in 40 years he's never had a case of gazumping because he knows what he's doing. And if you have qualifications and you know what you're doing, then that gazumping should not happen in theory. So I support their call for that. I'm not sure what the second part of the question was.
Senator Belwa.
Yes, Mum, I'm happy to use that as my supplementary. So bearing in mind the comments that you've made, Minister, around the regulation, how does that apply or actually support evidence around the need for applying an 80% or 90% rental policy to a market that has never been regulated and never been capped? for a very, very long time.
Well, the Senator knows that social rent policy is my immediate and most important priority. That is, the work on that is being undertaken right now. I understand my office has had a very good meeting with Andy M. Holmes in the week. That there's some number crunching going on. It's good that we're doing this now in preparation for the island plan, because there will be implications for resources for a shortfall, and so it's good that we're doing that now. I don't think it's going to take very long. We do have a little bit of time, because the next rents wouldn't be set until the September RPI figure comes out, and that will come out in October. So we're using this time now to see if we can get a model after the P31 debate that would satisfy those who voted for that element of P31, and we're working hard at it.
Senator Mezek.
Given that there are around 2,000 applications on the Affordable Housing Gateway for first-time buyer properties, and Andium's scheduled building programme won't deliver close to all of the homes needed to meet that demand, would the Minister agree that a housing project led by a government developer, such as, for example, South Hill, should aim to maximise the contribution of first-time buyer housing as part of that development?
I hear the Senator, but the trouble is, SHADC were given the brief in 2019 by the Regeneration Steering Group to maximise the financial potential of the South Hill site. And there is potential because it commands one of the best views on the island. So they were given that brief and instruction by government 2 years ago. They've come back, they've done an architects competition, they've got their plans. Is it good government to now say, oh, actually, we want to change the brief now? I'm not sure. Where I think I could live with this and it could justify it is this, I say to the Senator. If revenue from the South Hill site, a maximum revenue raising potential, if some of that revenue it goes to providing affordable homes, or even into that pot I have got for an affordable home product, or help with deposit or what have you, then I could justify it, and maybe that is the way to do it.
Time for a very quick supplementary, Senator.
Is it good governance to allow a government developer to provide a category of home for which there is no overwhelming demand, and not provide a category of home for which there is overwhelming demand by the own statistics that he collects as housing minister? Does he not accept that there's a perfectly reasonable democratic argument for changing your instructions to a government-owned body to address the fact that the situation has changed?
Well, what if it can? I would just say this. Supply of homes on the open market is absolutely vital, and revenue from the scheme in South Hill would go to the scheme on the waterfront. There will be open market homes on that too, which will be more affordable. And I think that if we don't increase supply in the open market, that it'll self-inflate. And what we do need to do desperately is, and I'm starting this conversation this week with my political oversight group, we need to have a buy-to-let conversation, because that, ask any estate agent, is a real worry. If someone is, someone's nice to have second, third, fourth or fifth buy-to-let property as an investment, if that is depriving someone else of their necessity, their first foot on the housing ladder, then we have got to sort that out. And I think it's a big worry.
I'm afraid that draws to an end this period of questioning. We now move on to the third period for the questions without notice to the Chief Minister. And the first person I have on my list is Deputy Southern.
Thank you, Madam. Does the Chief Minister now accept that the agreement of the G20 to the G7 plans for a global minimum tax rate of 15% for companies will, in the short or long term, render unviable our own 0% rate of tax? And if not, can he explain why or how?
Chief Minister.
So I think the fundamental on that is we need to see what agreement comes through. We have always made the point that we are cooperative jurisdiction. We are well regulated and we fully participate in these type of matters, that the right venue for this is at the OECD, and that level playing field is important. So let's see how this runs. We have got plans if necessary, sir, and we have got, as I said, plans in place that should things change, and these things usually take a number of years to change, that we can do whilst complying with not only OECD proposals, but also supporting all of our local industries. And as I said, we should be proud of the financial services industry we have, of its reputation, and also obviously the benefit to Ireland, sir. And I would hope not only this government, but I would hope, sir, that any government going forward would be as supportive as well, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Supplementary, if I may, sir, Madam. The Chief Minister said that we have got plans. Is he prepared to explore those plans with members of this Assembly?
Sir, at this stage, one does not, well, firstly, sir, we need to know exactly what agreement comes through from the OECD, and I think that's the critical point before we start reacting accordingly, sir. But as I said, as with any matters that we've had to deal with around our taxation policy and financial services, we treat these things extremely seriously. We cooperate always on these things. We are generally regarded as a cooperative jurisdiction, and I'd hope that's part of our reputation. And on that basis, let's see what the outcome is before we start running scared, sir. We are fully supportive of the industry, and so the crucial thing, as I've said, is that a sensible discussion is had and that a level playing field ensues, sir, which is appropriate for both large and small jurisdictions, sir.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Can I again extend to ministers the need to be concise in responding? That's 3 minutes for one question. We move on now to Deputy Ward.
Thank you, ma'am. And may I ask the Chief Minister, does the Chief Minister see the development of party politics as beneficial to our democratic system? Thank you, ma'am.
I'm sure, sir, it'll be an evolution, and sir, I think we will have to see how it evolves. Sir, I am concerned, sir, that opposition politics, I don't think, is supportive of the system that we have. Constructive challenge is always a good thing in any system, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary, ma'am. Will he or other members of the Council of Ministers let the public know if they have any party political alliances in order to have a full disclosure about factors that may influence decision making?
I'm sure, sir, that as and when people's allegiances are properly defined, that will be required, sir.
Next up, I have Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, ma'am. The Chief Minister has heard from the Housing Minister that there's going to be no progress on the proposition which I brought to the States and was passed in September for a digital commercial and residential property register. Will the Chief Minister, to honour the promises that were given originally, either give resources or money to the Housing Minister to enable it to be completed by the end of this year as was originally agreed?
Sir, I've been as equally as disappointed as the Deputy on this, and I have been having discussions. I am very keen to see the register that the Deputy proposed put in place. I think it is complementary to various things, including, as we know, population and also other matters around property registration. And I believe the Deputy's approach was sensible. And so on that basis, I am extremely supportive of it, and am in discussions, and had discussions even today briefly with the Deputy St. Peter, sir, around this area, and I am keen, sir, to see it carried forward.
Supplementary, Deputy Higgins.
Yes, just to confirm, will the Chief Minister, I appreciate what he's just said, but will he be prepared to put money or manpower to it to achieve its completion by the end of this year as originally planned?
So what I can't, as ever, what I can't guarantee is that it will be completed this year. I certainly would like to see work commencing and that is something I am actively exploring. However, sir, bear in mind questions I've previously given, answers I've previously given to questions from the deputy. I am actively taking up some of the responses I was given, or some of the information I was given with the relevant officers, sir.
Deputy Truscott.
Thank you, Ma'am. Ma'am, scientists recognised early on that the Delta or Indian variant was significantly more efficient in transmission than its counterparts, some 60% more efficient to be precise. Ma'am, can the Chief Minister explain the rationale behind his government's decision to relax the rules around the wearing of face masks, knowing that Delta was on island with the potential to spread fast? Thank you, Ma'am.
Chief Minister.
Yes, and actually, Ma'am, I need to apologise because I've been lapsing into using sir, and I do very humbly apologise, Ma'am, before I'm sure I'll do it again. Ma'am, as the deputy correctly states, we are in essentially guidance territory, sir, Ma'am, of I'm going to get myself into trouble here. Guidance, Ma'am, on most of the use of masks, except for transport. Transport is still governed by law. It is still a legal requirement to wear masks on the bus. And I just want to make that point quite clearly. In terms of the use of masks, the spread that we are seeing at present is mostly around younger people, households, and areas of what we call social contact. And so in the context of having a very, very good vaccination take up across all those we want to be protecting, the view to date, but we continue to review the evidence on a very regular basis, that masks would be unlikely to have had a significant impact on the present wave, but because that's not it's unlikely to be significantly mediated by the use of masks in this context. What is very important is having a very good test and tracing regime and having the isolation regime, which members have just been briefed on and which announcement has gone on about. And as a guide, Ma'am, we are now at around 15,000 PCR tests, I think were last week, and that's excluding the lateral flow devices, which is probably another couple of thousand. And that's even bigger than we saw in November, December. And so that gives an indication of the level of testing and tracing that we're putting in place. That to date is the view that is the most significant way of trying to mitigate the impact. Bearing in mind, it's also a matter of proportionality. At the point the masks were released, obviously the levels were significantly low, and then we had to take advice on was it proportionate to keep it in place.
Deputy Truscott, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Ma'am. Many of us have loathed wearing face masks, but have done so for the greater good. With COVID cases rising at an alarming rate, Ma'am, when will or at what point will the Chief Minister consider reversing his government's decision and place masks back on a mandatory footing, as popular as that may prove to be? Thank you, Ma'am.
As I said earlier, Ma'am, the view at the moment that introducing a mask is unlikely to impact upon the present wave that we are seeing. And that's why I spent a bit of my answer on the testing and tracing regime. And that, as I said, to date, is the advice that we are receiving. What I will say is I think it is likely that numbers will continue to increase. That, as we know, the spread will be quite swift, or can be quite swift in these instances. But in general, not exclusively, but in general, it's in the age ranges that are less impacted by the virus itself, and that is where, sir, Ma'am, we are likely to be in that territory of having to of getting closer to being in that new normal of living with COVID, i.e., treating it like, if you like, a flu infection, sir, Ma'am, rather than the pandemic we're presently in. We're not quite there yet, but on that basis, Ma'am, that's the view we are taking. And again, emphasising, I really encourage all islanders, A, to adhere to guidance that we give, but B, please take up the vaccines when they are available.
Senator Valois.
Thank you, Ma'am. I'd like to ask the Chief Minister, considering the number of questions that have been made to ministers today, around R105 and the transfer of approximately £18 million to the hospital, which I'm not arguing or suggesting is wrong, but actually I am going to challenge the forecasting and expectations of that funding that was agreed in the government plan under the capital expenditure to spend on the specific requirements for the capital programme, and why it was determined appropriate for those to be deferred, or areas where it was no longer necessary for those funds to be needed to pay
Senator,
for
questions
the
also have
delay.
to be concise as well as the answers from ministers.
Yeah, no, I literally was just finishing. Sorry.
Sorry.
So R105 referred to the delay, and there were some areas where funding was no longer needed. So I just want to understand from the Chief Minister, from that question, across the board, why that was deemed necessary.
Apologies, Mum. What was the actual question in that lot? Could the Deputy Senator just repeat the actual question?
Yes, so I will do it as quickly and as clearly as I possibly can. R105 clearly referred to deferrals and areas of expenditure in capital spend that was no longer needed. I want to understand from the Chief Minister, in terms of the forecasting of capital expenditure and the funding for those areas, considering the amount of money that was transferred as a head of expenditure, whether consideration for that funding was appropriate.
If the question is, was consideration of the funding appropriate, the answer is yes. Probably one of the most critical projects we have is the hospital project. We are on a tight timetable, and as we made very clear in the debates that were held in December, delays on the project did have consequences. The consequence, and as we've alluded already to Mum, that was covered by the Centre, for example, in the scrutiny hearing I attended late last week, where this question was also raised. As we've said, this is basically a cash flow issue, where because of the delays that came through from the debates, which is absolutely fine, but we made it very clear that this would be the consequence, that occurred towards the end of last year. The next stage of approval is obviously delayed. That has caused a slippage, a gap in the timing of cash that can be applied to the project. It is not an increase in expenditure. It is not an increase in cost. It is purely a timing on the availability of cash flow, and that's why we've taken the decision we had. They all apply in general terms. It applies to projects that were either underspent, so we've utilised the money in a different way, or a project, for example, may have been delayed because of COVID, and because of that delay, the money wasn't being spent, and therefore has been utilised on this. As I said, in the intention that there's no overall increase in expenditure. It is purely a timing issue, which ministers have cooperated together.
I'm not going to allow a supplementary question on that one. We're going to move to the next question. I'm going to give another 2 minutes of extra time for the delays, and also for the time taken in saying ma'am instead of sir, and sir instead of ma'am. I'll do this extra half a minute. So Senator Mesic, you've got the last question.
Thank you, Ma'am. Could I ask the Chief Minister when he became aware that the IoT business was to be sold by JT, and when he became aware that the CEO of JT would be moving to the now privatised IoT, and whether he considers that appropriate?
So the first point would have been a few weeks ago. I'd have to check the date, and obviously then briefed accordingly. The movements, I can't say exactly when. It has not come as a surprise to me, and so ultimately it is a matter of a private employment contract between a company which we own and obviously a company that is being created. Ma'am.
Speedy supplementary.
I won't have time for a meaningful one.
That draws to a close. Questions without notice for ministers. We move to public business. Before we start public business, decisions need to be made about whether to reduce the minimum lodging period in respect of several matters on the order paper. The first item is the proposition entitled Jersey Police Complaints Authority Appointment of Member P55 of 2021, which was lodged by the Minister for Home Affairs. Minister, do you wish to make the proposition under Standing Order 26.7 that the lodging period be reduced to allow this matter to be debated at the sitting?
Yes, please.
Is the proposition seconded? Does anybody wish to speak on the proposition? Very well. I think we would do this in a version of the standing vote. If anybody wishes, they can ask for a vote on the chat. But otherwise, I shall give a few moments for people to put any messages on the chat to the contrary. Otherwise, we will take it as read that that matter has been agreed. No contrary view.
Can I ask for a vote, please? Sorry, I haven't had the time to type it.
Deputy Taddier, you'd like there to be a vote on the matter?
Yes, please.
Very well. I'll ask the greffier to put a vote into the chat channel of this meeting. And the vote is whether or not to allow this matter to be debated at this sitting under Standing Order 26.7. The voting link is now in the chat. I'll ask members to cast their votes accordingly.
Ma'am, as it might take a bit more time, can we just have a little bit more time to fill this one? Thank you.
No problem. Leave it open a little long. Right. If all members have had an opportunity to cast their votes, I'll ask the greffier to close the voting.
Oh, not yet. Sorry.
Oh. Is it still open, greffier?
Yeah.
It's still open.
Sorry, I needed a verification text. I'm all done now. Thank you very much, Ma'am. Very much appreciated.
Very well, we can close the voting now, greffier. The results are in. There were 33 votes for and 3 votes contra and a further 4 votes for in the chat. So the proposition is adopted.
May I have the 3, please?
We have the 3, please, greffier.
The members voting contra, Deputy Taddier, Senator Valois and Deputy Ward.
The other item which is needing to have a reduction in lodging period is the item that's been lodged by the Minister for Health and Social Services, the draft COVID-19 election of Durats Jersey Regulations 2000 P60. Minister, do you wish to make the proposition under Standing Order 26.7 that the lodging period be reduced to allow this matter to be debated at the sitting?
Yes, ma'am, if I may, and briefly explain the reasons why. This arises from the retirement of a jurat earlier this month. The election of jurats is governed by the Royal Court Law 1948, which provides only a limited time period for an electoral college meeting to be called to elect a replacement. So such a meeting is required in short order. The regulations I propose are needed to put in place a framework within which that meeting can be carried out in a COVID-safe manner. or delayed until such times the COVID situation is no longer a concern for large gatherings. And due to the constitution of the Electoral College, meetings do have the potential to be very large, over 500, I understand, if all attended, held in facilities with limited space, that's usually the Royal Court, but also open to the public. So quite rightly, the bailiff has considered COVID safety to be of considerable importance. So therefore, I'm asking the Assembly to suspend the standing order to allow this shortened lodging period to get the regulations in place before the time limit requires that an Electoral College be called and cause difficulties for the bailiff, who could not thereby keep to the legal requirements in a COVID-safe manner. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mark.
Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, ma'am.
Deputy Tadier, I noticed in the chat you've put question. Does that mean you want to speak on the proposition?
Yes.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you. I guess the question, first of all, is what happens if we say no to the lodging period reduction and this doesn't get debated today? What's the default position? I think that would be helpful to know in order to determine where the public interest lies. I think there's a wider question here, which is, I'm not sure, it's probably slightly beyond the auspices of this debate as to, I'm going to leave it there because I think I don't want to go off into a tangent on perhaps comments on the main debate, ma'am. So that's my question really to the Minister.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? If no other member wishes to speak, then I call upon the Minister for Health and Social Services to reply.
Marv, I understand that the default position would be that if this matter cannot be debated and regulations passed this week and has to wait until the next sitting of the Assembly, in the interim period, the time limit for calling an election will have expired. This leaves the bailiff who convenes a meeting of the Electoral College in the position of having to decide to convene the college in the normal way, with the risk that numbers of people attend in a way that is not safe, or to defer. But he would be, if he chose to defer, he would be not within the Royal Court law. The island would be left in breach of the law because a meeting had not been called, and the island would be without one of the 12 jurats who are essential to the administration of justice in the island. So it's not as if this matter has been lodged at the last minute. There has been a period in which, some weeks in which this has been lodged. I've received no objections from members or members of the public, and I consider this an appropriate piece to ensure that meetings of the Electoral College can proceed in a COVID-safe way. I hope members will agree. Thank you, sir. Mark.
In a moment, the greffier will add a vote into the chat channel of this meeting. Votes now there. I ask members to cast their votes. If all members have now had the opportunity of casting their vote, I'll ask the greffier to close the voting. And the proposition has been adopted. 33 votes for and a further 2 in the chat and 3 votes contre. Well, then we move on to the first item of public business, which is the Draft Taxation Partnerships Economic Substance Jersey Law 2000. The main respondents, lodged by the Minister for External Relations and Financial Services. For the purposes of this debate, the main respondent will be the Chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel, and ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft Taxation Partnerships Economic Substance Jersey Law 2000, a law to impose an economic substance test on Jersey resident partnerships. The states, subject to the sanction of Her Most Excellent Majesty and Council, have adopted the following law.
Minister.
Thank you, Mum. The Draft Taxation Partnerships Economic Substance proposes the means by which a commitment which I gave on behalf of the Government of Jersey to address concerns of the EU Code of Conduct Group regarding the economic substance of partnerships can be met. So this law gives effect to that commitment. The law ensures that partnerships are within the scope of economic substance, consistent with the requirement of companies and the economic substance law that the Assembly approved previously. We are one of the most stable and successful international finance centres in the world, and that reputation is well deserved. It's the responsibility of government and this Assembly to continue to drive excellence and adherence to international standards in what we do. Jersey has a proven record of adapting to and also shaping the development of international standards in tax transparency and tax good governance. This law is vital for promoting and protecting the island's reputation as a well-regulated jurisdiction that is committed to international standards, and to maintain Jersey's listing as a cooperative jurisdiction by the European Union Code of Conduct Group. The law requires that unless specifically excluded, partnerships resident in Jersey have sufficient substance in terms of people, assets and expenditure in Jersey, and that they are both managed from Jersey and conduct their income generating activities in Jersey. The exclusions are for partnerships of individuals subject to Jersey tax, partnerships which are neither part of a multinational enterprise and whose activities are wholly domestic, and of course funds partnership. So in summary, this law is the latest stage in Jersey's compliance with international standards and maintains the island's well-deserved reputation as a cooperative jurisdiction, and I commend the principles of this legislation, sir.
Thank you very much. Minister, are the principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel, I simply wish to confirm that we have been fully briefed on this matter. We fully accept the rationale behind what is effectively extension of other laws to this situation, and we therefore endorse the proposition. Thanks, sir.
Very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? No other member wishes to speak on the principles? And I call on the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. I'm extremely grateful for the Deputy of St Mary's comments in his role as Chair of the Scrutiny Panel. I'm grateful to him and that panel for undertaking the review of this legislation and, of course, other pieces of legislation that my ministry has before the Assembly at this sitting, sir. And I, as I said earlier, commend the principles of this legislation to the Assembly and call for the appel, sir.
Thank you very much. So I would ask the greffier to put a link into the chat. The link is in the chat. I ask the greffier to open the voting and ask members to vote in the normal way. So if members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The vote is 36 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 3 votes pour in the chat. Well, I'm assuming, Deputy Sir Mary, that your scrutiny panel doesn't wish to call this in?
No, sir, we do not. Thank you.
Very much indeed. How do you wish to deal with the matter in second reading?
I wish to take the articles en bloc, sir, but I'll just talk through the parts, hoping to, unless there are questions or concerns, culminate with one vote in the second reading, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. So part 1 is the interpretation, and it deals with the term partnership and resident partnership. Part 2 is the actual economic substance test. These articles describe the requirements under the law which resident partnerships must meet in order to satisfy the economic substance test. Part 3, sorry, of course, in part 3 as well, there are penalties for not dealing with those tests and complying with the legislation appropriately. Part 3 deals with the requirement of partnerships to provide information, and there are fines described in those articles as well for failure to provide the required information. And parts 4 and 5 describe the controller's duties and powers, appeals and enforcement. These also include the dates from which the law is effective, being accounting period starting on or before the 1st of January 2022 for partnerships existing on the 1st of July 2021, and for all new partnerships beginning from the date they are formed. And I endeavour to answer any questions that members may have. So thank you.
Are the articles seconded in second reading? Does any member wish to speak on any of the articles? Any member wishes to speak? Deputy St. Peter?
Well, the question really for the Minister. Our compliance departments with any financial services organisations are already quite heavily overworked, shall we say, in maintaining our reputation as a highly compliant organisation. Would the Minister just share very quickly, I don't want to go all of these, what additional burden that will be on those compliance departments, if at all?
Does any other member wish to speak in second reading? If no other member wishes to speak in second reading, then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy of St. Peter for his question. It is a good question. Of course, those compliance departments will already largely be required and are required by legislation passed by this Assembly to comply with the economic substance requirements for the companies that they administer, and this is now extending with those exceptions that I outline and the law makes clear to partnerships as well. So it will be extra work, but I would expect in most cases that companies dealing with these matters will now have sufficient systems in place to deal with them, and therefore it should be solved from a systems perspective. And they, of course, are also used to submitting information to Revenue Jersey. Perhaps the Deputy, though, does refer to a wider issue whereby the role of compliance individuals and functions within businesses and firms is needing to grow and strengthen. And one of the issues that I will be speaking to members about and dealing with in the strategic refresh that's being undertaken for financial services is necessary training, courses, support right across industry to ensure that we continue to meet the very highest standards and have the very best people undertaking these functions in the future, as we have had in the past. So I maintain all parts through to 5, which is all the parts, and call for the appel in this second reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The appel is called for. I ask the greffier to place a vote into the link into the chat. And I open the voting and ask members to vote in the usual way. If members have had the opportunity of casting their votes, then I ask the greffier to close the voting. And the articles have been adopted in second reading, 37 votes for, no votes contra, no abstentions in the link, and a further 1 vote for registered in the chat. Do you propose the matter in third reading?
Indeed, I do, sir. Thank you, and I stand ready again to answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
The law seconded in third reading?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in third reading? Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister, I've just scrolled down, I found it again. It says in Article 10, it's on page 28, the maximum amount of penalty a partnership is liable to under paragraph 3 is A, 50,000 times B plus 1, where B is the number of previous consecutive financial periods. Is there a minimum fine? Could that be effectively 0 if it's felt to be? And is there no link to the income of the partnership, i.e. that could be, to put it succinctly, peanuts for a company? Thank you, sir.
Any other member wish to speak in third reading? I should say, Deputy Ward, that's technically not a matter for third reading because it's on the adoption of law as passed in second reading. Any question about the article should be raised in second reading, but I'm sure if the Minister wishes to respond, he will do so if he wishes to.
Just so I got my timings wrong there.
And if no other member wishes to speak in third reading, then I close the debate and call upon the Minister to respond.
Thank you, sir. So this is a test that partnerships that meet the criteria have to comply with to be partnerships. So it's not about the income that is generated within the partnerships. They must meet the test to be partnerships here in Jersey, as I say, with the exceptions. And therefore, sir, it is extremely important that they meet the test. If they fail to meet the test, then the fine, as Article 10 outlines, will be applied. If the fine is not met, the partnership then has at least 30 days to pay the fine, but the ultimate sanction is that the court would be involved in the process and may even in extremis dissolve the partnership. But so that will be rightly a decision for the court to make, taking into account all the facts of the individual case. So I maintain the law in third reading.
Very well. I'll ask the greffier to place a voting link into the chat. Vote is on the adoption of the law in third reading. And I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The law has been adopted in third reading, 36 votes for, no votes contra, no abstentions in the link, and a further 1 vote for in the chat. Very well. There was some discussion about finishing a little early today because of the coming of the CPA AGM, which is scheduled for 5:45. Of course, I'm in the hands of the Assembly as ever as to when that might be the case, but I wondered before we move on to the next item if now might be a convenient time. So I would just ask if any member wishes to propose the adjournment at this point.
Yes, please, sir.
Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the question of whether or not we adjourn?
Sir,
Yes.
could I ask if there's any indication of states members coming in for the AGM? Does the GRAP have any indication of who's travelling in?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. We were expecting some to travel in, I believe, Deputy, but we've made arrangements to deal with it over Teams against the eventuality that we might at risk of being in Core8, which obviously would be a bad thing. So I don't think I can assist you any further than that. Very well, no member wishes to speak, then I will take this on a standing vote. So could anyone who wishes to have an appel put in the call for and put in the link, could they indicate in the chat now? No one indicates, therefore, to the contrary. I will take this as an approval on a standing vote, and the Assembly stands adjourned until tomorrow morning at 9:30.